It's October 30th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with the latest developments over in Gaza. Israel has now launched what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is describing as his country's second war for independence. The death toll in Gaza alone exceeded the 8,000 mark over the weekend. As South Korea observes the first anniversary of the crowd crush in Itaewon that killed 159 people during last year's Halloween celebrations, President Yoon said Sunday he will continue working toward building a safe South Korea. And starting today, South Korea and the U.S. are conducting a joint large-scale aerial drill involving stealth fighter jets as part of joint efforts to deepen defense capabilities against the military threats from North Korea. Tensions are soaring in Gaza as Israel expands its ground operations in the region. In fact, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the war has entered a new stage which will be long and difficult. Shin Se-byung reports.
The Israeli military continued its ground operations in Gaza throughout Sunday. The Israel Defense Forces said it destroyed Hamas anti-tank positions and killed several gunmen on the Gaza coast and at the Erez border crossing. Since it expanded its ground operations in Gaza on Friday night, the IDF has targeted Hamas operatives and positions hitting hundreds of underground tunnels and bunkers. As the war rages, Israel's military in a televised briefing on Sunday urged Palestinians in Gaza to evacuate northern regions, calling it urgent.
Over the last 2 weeks, we have been calling on residents of the northern Gaza Strip and Gaza City to relocate southward temporarily. We are today emphasizing that this is an urgent call.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also said the war against Hamas has now entered a second stage and warned it would be a tough one.
The war inside the Gaza Strip will be long and difficult, and we are ready for it.
There have been suggestions that the IDF is now using siege tactics on Hamas. According to The Economist on Sunday, the IDF has now shifted its strategy to an encirclement tactic and slower campaign. This comes according to the report as the Israeli military reportedly set up a base in Gaza on Friday, unlike in previous operations where they withdrew from the Strip overnight. This way, Israel's invasion of Gaza would be more gradual, which could help it avoid inflicting mass civilian casualties. The British publication also highlighted that the strategic shift aims to deplete essential supplies like fuel and food stored in Hamas underground tunnels and bunkers. Citing a high-ranking Israeli official, The Economist said that this ground operation could take up to a year. Shin Se-byung, Arirang News.
Now, the death toll in Gaza continues to increase, crossing 8,000. Meanwhile, Iran's president warned Israel has crossed the red line in the region, which may force everyone to take action. Lee Seung-ja has more.
The death toll in Gaza has surpassed 8,000 since armed conflict began between Israel and Hamas on October 7th. According to Gaza's health ministry, the number of injured as a result of Israeli airstrikes is also approaching 20,000. The ministry added that the death toll may actually be much higher, with many people still trapped under rubble. As rescue teams continue their search and rescue operations, a total of 1,800 people are reportedly missing, with 1,000 of them being children. With Israel continuing air raids in Gaza, Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi said Sunday that Israel has crossed the red line in Gaza, which may force everyone to take action, hinting at the possibility of Tehran getting involved in the conflict. Taking to social media, President Raisi said the U.S. told Iran not to do anything, but Washington continues to give widespread support to Israel. Meanwhile, the U.S. had initially questioned Iran's involvement in the October 7th attacks. U.S. intelligence suggested that Iranian officials were also surprised by Hamas's attack and that Tehran was not directly involved in its planning, resourcing, or approval. Meanwhile, during a visit to Nepal, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for the protection of all civilians in Gaza. While Guterres condemned the October 7th attacks by Hamas, he expressed regret that Israel has intensified its military operations instead of a humanitarian pause supported by the international community. He also urged those with responsibility to step back from the brink and called the situation in Gaza a humanitarian catastrophe. Guterres visited the country to extend condolences to the families of 10 Nepalese students killed by Hamas in southern Israel on October 7th. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea and the U.S. will conduct a large-scale joint area exercise this week involving stealth fighter jets to enhance combined readiness against North Korea. Seoul's Air Force said last Friday that the 5-day Vigilant Defense at 24 will kick off on Monday, involving South Korea's F-35A fighters and tanker transport aircraft, as well as U.S. F-35A and F-35B fighters and other warplanes. The allies aim to enhance the interoperability of those advanced fighter jets through airborne alert interdiction and close air support operations. North Korea has long accused the Seoul-Washington joint drills of being rehearsal of an invasion, often launching provocations as a protest against them. South Korea's military spotted a North Korean vessel drifting in the waters near the northern limit line in the East Sea on Sunday and provided humanitarian support. According to the Joint Chief of Staff on Sunday, a maritime patrol aircraft detected a rescue request from an unknown vessel stranded 3 kilometers north of the NLL before confirming it came from North Korea. The military said the people on the vessel had been adrift for 10 days, requested food and water, and wished to return north. The military provided food and water on humanitarian grounds. It also notified the North of the situation through the United Nations Command and other communication channels. This incident comes 5 days after a North Korean boat carrying suspected defectors across the NLL in the East Sea. China's top diplomat Wang Yi's visit to the U.S. ended with a promise from both countries to make a Biden-Xi summit happen at the APEC summit next month. Now, will the meetup reboot thorny Washington-Beijing relations? For more, we're joined by Jeff Min this morning. Welcome.
Thank you. Pleased to be here.
The road to make that summit come true may not be so smooth. Now, Wang Yi said himself that autopilot should not be relied on to achieve that summit to make it come true. Now, what does that mean?
Wang's comments are a recognition of the fact that despite high-level desire to improve relations, the U.S. and China face very difficult issues, and there have been setbacks. For example, the spy balloon incident was an unanticipated mini-crisis that stalled diplomatic process for several months. Right now, there are a half a dozen different issues that could develop unpredictably and generate friction. There are international issues like the Middle East, the South China Seas, Ukraine, bilateral issues like tariffs, export controls, and China's reckless flying behavior in the Taiwan Straits, and even domestic issues like the U.S. elections and China's faltering economy. So all of these issues need to be managed carefully between now and any summit meeting, and that's why Wang Yi is cautioning that the U.S.-China relationship is not on autopilot at this point.
Sure, a wide range of security, economic, and even domestic issues may get in the way before that summit actually takes place. Now, what does Wang's mention of the Bali meeting signify then?
Well, the events leading to this potential summit date back to August of 2022, when then U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited China. China claimed that visit violated its One China principle, and it cut off all bilateral dialogues. In November of 2022, Presidents Biden and Xi met at a G20 meeting in Bali, and they decided there to take steps to stabilize relations. That decision led to a series of high-level visits between the countries to better understand positions on issues, with the hope of an eventual summit meeting between the presidents at the November APEC meeting in San Francisco. So it's widely assumed that at the top of Wang Yi's agenda during his recent Washington visit was tacit agreement, even though there's no announcement for the summit to occur, and plans for specific areas of agreement. for the leaders to discuss and then perhaps announce publicly.
Would you still say the agreement on working on that summit is still a big step made between the two sides? What do you think?
Both American and Chinese observers have said that U.S. China relations have sunk to their lowest level since the 1970s. So from that perspective, restarting the relationship is a big step. In addition, all of the major problems in the world involve the U.S. and China in one way or another, and their cooperation is really essential in terms of achieving outcomes. So, for example, cooperation between the two countries could significantly improve the global response to climate change and pandemics. So improving U.S.-China relations is not only a big step, but it's a necessary step for purposes of enhancing global peace and prosperity.
Sure, Washington and Beijing indeed have come a long way, but is it fair to say the Biden-Xi summit will actually be a turning point for defrosting their tensions?
I think that the anticipated summit could be a turning point in relations, but we shouldn't fool ourselves into thinking that the relationship is going to return to the status quo. China has spent the last year issuing policy statements outlining its vision for a world that is separate and distinct from the democratic, rules-based, market-governed world that China pretended to want to join for the first 30 years of the U.S.-China relationship. China recently announced global government initiatives, which include initiatives in the areas of security, development, and even civilization. And this vision defines an alternative world order. The Chinese vision is an authoritarian world with a state-run economy and mercantilist trade policies. That vision is fundamentally different from the Western vision, and I think that China's new aggressiveness in pressing that agenda internationally is probably a recipe for more friction in the future.
Right, and South Korea is also closely following the developments between the two countries. And what will that soften U.S.-China relations mean for South Korea, actually? Is there anything good or beneficial for Seoul in the near future?
Any improvement in U.S.-China relations can only be beneficial for South Korea. In fact, I can't think of any downside. For example, South Korea's top priority is managing the ongoing threat from North Korea. China is one of the very few countries that has friendly relations with North Korea, so China can perhaps facilitate useful communications and help moderate North Korean behavior. South Korea will also benefit from U.S.-China cooperation addressing transnational threats like climate change. And then in the economic realm, improved U.S.-China relations might also facilitate positive trade relations between South Korea and China. China has in the past launched punishing boycotts against South Korea, but better U.S.-China relations along with close U.S.-South Korea policy coordination could moderate Chinese aggressiveness.
Indeed. All right. Thank you so much for your insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
President Yoon vowed to do his best for public safety, expressing sorrow in remembrance of young people who died last year when Halloween street celebrations turned into a deadly crowd crush. On Sunday, the president attended a memorial service at a church in northern Seoul, marking a year since the fateful day that the accident occurred when some 100,000 people flocked to the streets of Itaewon, a nightlife area in Seoul, to enjoy Halloween festivities. 159 people died, most of them in their 20s. Offering his condolences to the bereaved families, Yoon said it had been the saddest day of his life.
오늘은 제가 살면서 가장 큰 슬픔을 가진 날입니다. 대한민국 국민 모두가 저와 같은 마음일 것입니다. 불의의 사고로 돌아가신 분들의 명복을 빕니다.
He said it is the duty of Korean citizens to make the world a better place where everyone can enjoy safety in their daily lives. He pledged stronger efforts on government's part to make the country safe so that the sacrifices of the lives lost would not be in vain. So it's been 1 full year since the devastating incident happened here in Seoul. What changes were made since then and what still needs to be done? Our Song Yoo-jin reports.
October 29th, 2022. Itaewon, a popular nightlife spot in Seoul, witnessed an unimaginable tragedy. A crowd crush resulted in the loss of 159 lives. 1 year later, we reflect on the question of what's changed. The absence of adequate crowd control measures has been pinpointed as a major factor. This year, director-level personnel from the Interior Ministry, alongside firefighters and police officers, are being deployed to areas expected to see overcrowding both before and after Halloween. Seoul city government is installing around 8,000 AI-enabled closed-circuit TV cameras. These cameras can detect and alert authorities to dangerous crowding. But there are still challenges.
There's now an emphasis on local governments to manage events that do not have organizers like the Itaewon Halloween festivities. But it's unclear whether every region has enough personnel and resources to do that.
The impact of tragedy has been psychological, too. Over 7,000 individuals have sought counseling. Mostly the general public after being exposed to unfiltered graphic images and videos of the accident online.
Trauma can resurface any time in the future. If you need help, you can access free treatment programs at national and regional trauma centers anytime. Local mental health and welfare centers also offer various counseling and programs related to mental health.
Back in Itaewon, instead of the customary Halloween festivities, the streets are calm, with some streets posting signs paying tribute to the victims. So this is the exact spot where the deadly crowd crush happened last year, and now, as you can see, it's now a place where people will be able to forever remember those who lost their lives on the night of October 29, 2022. Messages of condolences fill the walls. People continue to stream in to pay their respects. They hope something like this will never happen again.
And whenever I walk down here, I always pause and stop and I pray. Yeah.
Avoiding large gatherings is just not realistic, so I think it's absolutely crucial to have public servants, firefighters, and police personnel involved in crowd control.
Since the accident, I've experienced some trauma when it comes to large crowd gatherings. Nonetheless, I believe that people heal through one another. My wish is for these interactions to take place in areas that are comfortable and safe.
October 29, 2022 will remain etched in the memory. Those who were lost will be remembered by those endeavoring for a safer future. 송유진, Arirang News.
10 days on from the first confirmed cases of lumpy skin in South Korea, lumpy skin disease in South Korea, the total number of farms with infected cattle rose to 61 on Sunday. The latest case came out of Muan, Jeollanam-do province to mark the first case of the disease in the region. A total of 4,107 cattle have been called or are being called at farms with confirmed cases. The outbreak has also expanded to 7 cities and provinces. With an emergency vaccination order on all cattle across the country being issued, vaccinations will take place until next month. Here in South Korea, we are in the middle of the vibrant autumn foliage season, and this year it's expected to be even more colorful than usual. Our Choi Soo-hyung has the story.
The mountains turning yellow and red means that autumn is here. In South Korea, peak foliage occurs when over 80% of the mountain's trees change color. It usually starts on Seoul Mountain in Gangwon-do province, east of the capital Seoul and the country's coldest region. From late October this year, famous fall foliage attractions across the country are set to welcome visitors.
The mountains near Seoul have already reached their peak autumn leaves, and mountains further south like Gaedongsan and Naejangsan are expected to have their peak fall foliage by early November.
One nearby location from Seoul is Yongmunsan Mountain in Yangpyeong-gun County, Gyeonggi-do Province, which boasts diverse tree species that determine the colors, making it a great choice for an autumn picnic. In particular, the maple trees along the track to Yongmun Temple. Its fall foliage started 9 days ago and has now reached its peak, displaying a variety of colors and beautiful landscapes.
It was my first time going on an autumn foliage trip this year, and the timing was just perfect. The autumn leaves had beautiful and vibrant colors, and when I climbed up the hill, seeing this, it made me feel peaceful and relaxed to relieve lots of the stress.
According to the Korea Forest Service, the leaf-changing season has been getting about 0.33 days later each year since 2009, likely due to rising temperatures from July to September. This year's peak fall foliage arrived 4 to 5 days later than usual, and these colorful leaves will stay for around a week to 10 days. People can still enjoy other parts of South Korea if they miss the northern and central mountain attractions. Those who want to explore autumn colors should pack their bags and have their calendars handy to start planning. The Forest Service said this year's fall foliage may be later, but due to temperature variations, it's expected to be more vibrant. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Kim Si-young, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin in the U.S., where a shooting in the Florida city of Tampa early on Sunday morning, local time, has left 2 dead and 16 hospitalized. The gunshots came during a street fight between 2 groups amid a crowd of hundreds of people leaving bars and nightclubs in Tampa's Ybor City neighborhood just before 3 a.m. Police initially reported a total of 18 casualties, which has been confirmed by Tampa Police Chief Lee Burko as 2 deaths and 16 injuries. Burko also stated that a 22-year-old suspect has been arrested and charged with second-degree murder. Now, moving over to Kazakhstan, where the death toll from a mine fire on Saturday has increased to 45. The fire at the Kostenko coal mine appears to be from a methane blast and was more deadly than initially reported. On Saturday, the local office of the steelmaker ArcelorMittal, which operated the mine in Kazakhstan's Karaganda region, stated that 206 of 252 people have been evacuated. Emergency teams at the mine are still searching for one remaining miner who may have been underground. In the world of sports, 22-year-old tennis player Italian Jannik Sinner won the Vienna Open on Saturday, defeating Russian Daniil Medvedev for the second time this month in an ATP 500 final. World number 4 on the ATP live rankings, the young Italian managed to get the upper hand in a 3-hour match against the world number 3 Medvedev. Just 3 weeks ago, Sinner had beaten the 27-year-old Medvedev for the first time in 7 attempts to win the China Open in Beijing. The Italian has now won 10 titles, 4 of them in 2023. American actor Matthew Perry, famous for his role as Chandler in the TV series Friends, has passed away at the age of 54. The Emmy-nominated actor was found dead at his Los Angeles home on Saturday. The cause of death has been cited as an apparent drowning. He is best known for his role in the sitcom Friends, which ran from 1994 to 2004, winning an Emmy Award in 2002 for Best Comedy Series. Perry was publicly open about his struggle with addiction to alcohol and drugs, which he mentions in his 2022 memoirs.
Good morning. Enchanting autumn colors in central areas are in full swing. Over the weekend, our beloved leaf-peeping spots were packed with visitors. Southern parts of the country will also see autumn colors expanding this week. In fact, we will be seeing much warmer than season temperatures throughout the week. There will be big gaps in readings today, which will help to develop autumn colors to become even more vibrant. But swings in inland areas could be nearly 20 degrees Celsius in some parts of the country, so please do dress accordingly. Temperatures will be similar to yesterday in most parts of the country under bright sunshine nationwide. Seoul and Daejeon sees highs of 21 degrees Celsius. Daegu, Gwangju, Busan topping out at 22 degrees. Sunny skies will dominate most places this week, except in the capital and west of Gangwon-do, with rain in the forecast in the midweek. Then next week looks to be much colder, so make the most of the warmth while you can. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Tuesday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.